Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I love you, but you need to change your sign behind you to match your new logo.
It's in the works.
Yeah. I decided to work
Working
at
on all of
home
them.
yesterday and today because I don't know if you can see how white it is out there. It's hard
It's
to,
just a white
it's all
glow. Like you
bright.
can't really see anything through there.
Yeah. Like we've gotten so much snow. It's been
I say, which is awesome for skiing.
It is, although I didn't go up yesterday because even the groomers were like 6 inches of snow because they groom at night. So
Hmm.
those are called PM and then AM. And the AM ones, they still do like at 4 in the morning, right? So
Hmm.
if it's still snowing, and I don't know how to ski on powder. Like I love the idea of a
You
powder.
really?
Well, it's different, right? And you lean back in your
Yeah.
skis. And I'm so out of shape right now. Oh my God. When I went Friday and there was powder, we did about 7 runs and I came home and I was literally like hanging onto the walls at the toilet to sit down on Saturday because my thighs were so sore. Hey, Carrie,
Hi.
how's everybody doing?
I have calls for the next 4 hours with no breaks.
Ooh, I did that yesterday.
Yeah. So I was definitely just shoving some eggs and sausage in my mouth, trying to eat it before I came to the basement.
Well, and here's what I would say to you too. Feel free at any time during these meetings to eat. Like I get it.
Yeah.
And but I remember when I worked for Citibank, I ended up with a refrigerator in my office. I had a water dispenser, right? Because we were on back to back to back meetings. And I said, if I bring a porta potty in here, I need an intervention, right? So I get to that it's like I don't want to be on calls all day. And what I found one time, my personal trainer asked me to jot down whenever I was eating what I was doing,
Uh,
which is really insightful. And what I found is that when I was on calls, I was eating. And that works if you have a couple calls a day, but when you're on calls like 8 hours a day, right, then that becomes a problem.
yeah.
So I get that.
Also, our home stretch business is taking off, y'all. Like
That's awesome.
Carrie, and
we've
of course it is.
yeah, we've done our first job already, and like
Wait,
we have
I'm gonna test
consultations,
this.
2 consultations tomorrow, and like I'm presenting a $37,000 quote tonight. So like I wrote in my journal we were going to do $150,000 in March, and like we might, and it's so cool.
Sorry, I was trying. I was like, if I switch cameras, will it do it? Will it give me the? Will it do
Yeah.
anything?
I
No.
think it has to be on your Mac. Like I use my Mac
That's what I
camera.
did. Like my Mac camera's over here,
Oh,
so I switched it to my Mac camera, and it didn't work.
doing it. Hey,
I only
Catherine,
have
so
it
you
on
walked
one
in. Carrie already has had a job in the new, what's it called? Home what?
home stretch.
Home stretch.
Homestretch, awesome. Congrats.
And what did you say about 150,000? Sorry, I was like busy
I,
playing with the camera.
I wrote in my morning pages, those morning pages, that we would do $150,000 in March and go up from there. And like, it's actually might happen or be really close. So
That's awesome. I just started doing my morning pages again this week. I haven't done them since I was in Vermont.
I just started on my iPad. So I'm being Lachelle. I got the paper cover on my iPad and the pencil, and I'm writing in there. And I'm faster. I feel like on paper and pen, I get so distracted. I don't know, but in here, I'm a little bit better. So
What I realized was that my hands don't remember how to write. Like I like there are certain letters that every time I try and write them, I screw them up, and I'm like, why? Every time, like, because I'm so used to typing everything, but I had
Mhm.
almost forgotten how to write.
You guys would laugh because my kitchen counter right now has like a binder with a bunch of like old college lined paper, that you buy in the reams, because that's how I like to create worksheets. And I was working on our April retreat and doing stuff. And then Sarah hates it because then I have to scan them in. I have a remarkable, but it just for me doesn't feel the same. So, like you were saying, Carrie, and I'll have you know, mine is right there in that stack of books right here. I'm finishing these first so that I can share with you all my new favorite book. And I'm not going to share it with you because you all go out and order it. And then it won't
that's
matter
true.
that I'm carting the damn thing to Costa Rica.
Well,
This is
the
what I'm
paperwork
reading right now.
accountability.
Accountability at work. Nice.
A very small book, but it has been amazing. Our leadership team is reading it, and it talks about the difference between setting an intention and making a promise, like, and how to be a person of your word at work. And that involves like not just saying yes because you're afraid to say no, like asking the right questions about the risks of not getting it done in time, or prioritization, or like, the asker, not just taking yes for an answer, right? Because they're so happy to get off their plate. Like actually understanding if the person they're asking has the ability and capacity to deliver what they're asking them to. And it's been really interesting. It was recommended to me, but it's a really short book, but highly recommend it for anybody who's got a team that they're working with, because I think it's just from both perspectives that work really well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that, because I've been working with a manager and an employee who they have like this, they both have hurt each other. And so it has not been about communication, but more about building trust and like understanding from the other side. And it's all I can do not to say, sign up for the mastermind, but I'm contractually, I can't. To the leader, to the manager, because I'm like, I sometimes like leadership. I'm really like, I think more and more, like Carrie will get this because she and I both have had the same mentor in Jack Horseman, but like more and more we are needing to see servant leaders rise up, right? Like, and what I mean by servant leaders is like bringing your human to work, right? And like leading people in a fashion that allows them to have dignity and pride and, all of those things. But yeah.
That's a good book, Dignity.
There's a book called Dignity.
Hmm.
I feel like Kathy's read so many books.
I know.
So many books.
I know.
And there's so many more.
Places, and so read so many books.
Well, I just hopped on the bandwagon and ordered the Court of Thorns and Roses. I don't know if y'all have seen that book out there, but like all of a sudden it was all over my social media everywhere. And I was like, all right, I'm going to buy it. I haven't read it yet, but bought it.
Is it fiction or is it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a series of books, but the first one is called The Court of Thorns and Roses. I have
Nice.
zero idea what it's about at all. Just that so many people I knew were reading it that I was like, all right, I haven't bought like a fiction book, like a non-work book in so long. I'm going to do it. So
Okay,
I may still be reading it when I see you next month.
It's interesting that you say that, because I asked, when I went to Florida, I asked my daughter-in-law, who reads ferociously, although she's not in my son got her this book club thing where she could pick out paper books like twice a month or whatever. And now she's got a Kindle, so now I won't be able to borrow them from her. But she, like she likes these like, I call them flitty romance novels, right? That are so predictable, but it's like you don't have to think. And I haven't read.
I love those.
I think, well, you'll like this one. I'll share it with you, but I have not read a fiction book. I think I've read one fiction book, and it was The Nightingale, which was a pretty deep fiction book anyway, which was phenomenal, by the way. But this is the first one I've read in a while. And the last 2 mornings that I've gotten up, I haven't been able to read my like self-help book because I want to find out what happens, even though I know what happens. Right? We're at that angst point where she leaves and then he goes and chases her,
Right. You know what's going to happen, but you still want to read it.
I feel like I'm living that moment right now.
Yeah. And Kathy, thank you for bringing that in, because Carrie, I think you wanted to say something, and then I want to go through and get some wins from everybody.
Oh, I don't remember.
Okay. So
Do
Kathy,
you read
talk to
fiction
us.
books?
I love fiction books, but I feel like there was a time in my life where I realized it caused me discontent in my current life, because you want the romance and the whirlwind. Also, I will stay up till 5 a.m. reading because I just one more chapter.
Yeah,
And
me too.
so it's probably been a long time. I'll read one on vacation here or there, and I've got some downloaded on my Kindle to read on vacations. But last spring break, I downloaded like 10. Of course, I read 2, but and on the airplane on the way home. So that's when I started reading them.
Well, I will say, if you want a good fiction book, there's 2. So I lied. I've read 2 before this one. It's something's, I can't remember the name of it, and I'll find out for you, but it's something library. And it's about this woman who she is thinking about committing suicide. So it sounds really dark, but it goes through and she pops into different points in her life of where she could have made different decisions, and like shows
It's a
her.
Wonderful Life.
kind of, yeah. But yeah, in a more updated version.
Hmm.
And it's really good. Something Library is what it's called. And then the other one is That Nightingale, about these two sisters in Nazi occupied France. That like books usually I can't read too many of the same author because I figure out their pattern very quickly. And this one though, completely, have you read it, Pam?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it completely took me by surprise. So I love books like that.
I like
So
to read anything that's not like current day because then it's not reality, right? Like I'm not trying to compare it to my kind of like what you were saying, Carrie. Like I'm not trying to compare it to my current life. Like if I'm reading about something happening in England in 1820, right? It has no like there's no comparison to my real life. It's just a pure escape, a pure like
It's
escape to
not, you
something.
never build me campfires to roast our rabbit.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Oh,
Okay,
that's funny.
tell me some wins.
Mm.
Kathy,
Um,
the surgery got rescheduled and not the same time as your sister?
yeah, because I'm leaving like as soon as we like I'm packed and ready to go, and I'm leaving it for my sister. And the surgery is April 2nd.
Nice.
And
I'm glad it's
um
not on April Fool's Day.
I know, but he's going to the dentist today on his own, so that's big. My daughter's in town. She's gonna help, you know,
Oh, yeah, wait,
drive my other daughter to school and stuff like that.
Mm.
And and I don't know. Oh, the presentation that we did and the dam metaphor. I was like, I need to put that in the book. So,
no, you need to put it in your second book.
no, we put it in there, and it's
Okay.
not delaying anything. It's like
Okay.
Oh, good.
he put in the like the order, and he's like, if we do it Monday, which we did, um, they won't even know, you know, that the submittal is Monday. It's part of their week-long process of doing the book. So it's in there now. And
Cool.
and the process, it'll probably take a week. Um, so probably a week from today, I'll have the final proof.
Nice.
That's
And
That's
then when
exciting.
is the publisher going to start publishing? Have they said?
I think as soon as we say okay on the proof,
Cool.
then it's called the first edition. So
Yeah.
Mm. So
Way to
exciting.
go. Woohoo.
And then how does that work in the book world? Like, do you sell it yourself? Does it go on Amazon? Are you going to be in
it's
bookstores? Like, what's the?
it's gonna be on Amazon.
Okay.
I think there's a couple other digital bookstores that the publisher is signed up with, but it's really, Amazon, which has its own process to go through that he's
So
in
are you
charge
going
of.
to have any physical books other than the
Mhm.
proof?
Mm. Mm.
Um, they're all different old proofs. Yeah, I'm gonna order some. Um,
Cool.
and like a friend of, or actually my former business partner that I just sold because I moved out of Michigan, um, is gonna host a book signing party for
Nice.
me, like a book release up in Michigan.
So I have a friend, Lindsay Gordon, who's coming in next week
Uh-huh.
for this book. She's a job coach and she's an engineer by trade, but super duper creative, like loves to go buy prom dresses at Goodwill and then do like photo shoots, right? Like, so she's super creative. She loves to,
Unusual for an engineer.
right? And so the book she wrote is right brained and left brained about finding the job that's right for you. So she's
Mhm.
coming into town next week because she's speaking at Gonzaga at this women's thing that I'm going to. And she did the funnest book launch. I can't see you necessarily loving to go buy a bunch of prom dresses, but I could see you doing it where you change cowboy boots. Like, so what she did is she did like this 4-hour launch that was live on Facebook, and she had somebody helping to like MC it. And she had like a thermometer thing about like how many books had sold or whatever. And she did something too where she gave like $1 for every book that sold to a nonprofit. And she would change prom dresses every time she met like a goal that she had created. And I could totally see you doing something like that, but changing cowboy boots, like showing off all of your. Uh,
Yeah, I could.
You'd have to change them like every 30 minutes, right? Anyway.
I'm like, I have to go to Sandpoint where the other half are.
Yep.
We need
Okay.
we need to plan a retreat around whenever this women's thing is next year. Because I'm like, I live too far to go to that stuff, but I want to go.
Yeah.
We need to plan a retreat, Debbie. Where we can go like ski the bunny hill and then go to the
That's
women's
all
thing.
Gotten
Well,
about.
I want to go to
14 now.
Sandpoint in the summer. I want to see the lake.
Also,
Well,
yeah.
and I will tell you guys, if you want to, like where I live, they have cabins for rent, and there is a big cabin up here that has 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. And it's got 1, 2, 3 baths. And it's just the cutest cabin. You can't see it from here, but anyway, if you guys want to come to my October retreat, I'm happy to give you a free ticket. You would just need to oh, Kathy has a place to stay, but you would need to just
I'd have
find
to block it out. It's October
Oh.
what?
When is the October retreat?
October 27th, starts on a Thursday night. There's something about Thursday nights
I'm
in
at a conference.
I have my 50th birthday on October 28th.
Ah,
Yeah, this is October 24th through the 27th.
okay.
We start with a cocktail
And
party, like what we did. So anyway, just let me know. You just would need to find your own place to stay.
I'm going to be at a conference in Fort Lauderdale.
Mhm.
Well, Florida in October or Sandpoint?
Well.
Gray with bogs on or sunshine? Let's see.
Yeah, and I'm bringing my husband too because I was like, you can work while I'm in the conference. This is not a conference that like one of the normal ones I go to where I know a ton of people.
Yeah.
So I was like, you can work while we're in the conference, and then at night we can go explore. And we're gonna stay for an extra like day or day and a half to hang out on the
Fun.
beach.
Awesome. Well, why don't you go next? Tell us your wins, and then I want to hear Carrie's wins again.
Yeah, so we've had a ton of business coming in the door all of a sudden, like massive amounts of referrals, and a lot of those like lunches and like staying in contact with people are finally like paying off, and they're sending people our way.
And I
Sent out
might offer
4.
up that some of your woo-woo is working.
So my woo is working. So I sent out 4 engagements last week, or 4 proposals, and I have 2 more to send out this week. And I just got a message from a guy that I know in the accounting world asking to connect in the next few weeks. And I was like, yeah, let me know what works for you, and I'll make it happen. He's like, how about this afternoon? I'm like, this is the guy who buys businesses.
That guy.
Like accounting businesses.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm like,
I love it.
I don't know if I'm ready to talk to you yet, but so we'll see. I don't know what that's about. I don't know why he randomly reached out. We see each other at conferences all the time, and I went to 2 of his sessions at the last conference and gave him some feedback after the first one so he could fill out for the second one. He's one of those who talks like 800 miles an hour, and he's like a college professor. He teaches classes at a community college, so I don't know what he was nervous about, but anyway.
Well, and
yeah.
keep that back door of your heart open to whatever may come, right?
Yeah. So that's those are
Awesome.
my wins.
Thank
Oh,
you.
and we think we have somebody we're gonna hire. We're
Fantastic.
like this close to making an offer. So yeah, with all this new business, we need capacity.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Gary, what about you?
I
Other
kind
than,
of
yeah, we're gonna make 150,000 in March.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, Homestretch is taking off and I love it. I think we all love it. And Mark's
Kim,
learning.
Awesome is this, right? Like part of what I love about you is you're like open to just whatever comes, right? Because that was not even on your purview when we were in Mexico, right?
Mm-mm.
And the
Yep.
Cinnaholic seems like it's taking a little bit longer to get up and running, right? Which has already created in your mind, we're going to get these up and running and successful and sell, right?
Yeah.
Like part
Yeah.
of your vivid vision. So I love how like all of you, like going through this process in Mexico and then going into your Vivid Vision. And even though we like resist it and like do it last minute, it's you're working on it the whole time and thinking about that. And so you were wide open when that opportunity came. So congratulations. Keep going with your wins, but I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Mark's learning a really good lesson about working in the business and not on the business. And so I'm happy that he's learning that on the very first job that we have. So I definitely feel the pull to like start hiring people soon, and that's exciting. So we have 3, this is a good win. We have 3 presentations at real estate offices this week. They're doing one right now, and we have one tomorrow and Thursday. So like same Coldwell Banker, but all 3 of their offices. So that's really exciting to be invited in to be in front of all those agents, because that's how we get our leads. So and our second job, like we have our second person who wants to take it, and then I have that big presentation today. So it's just very exciting. So
We have a booming
Super
real estate industry here. Just saying.
yeah.
You wanted to
Just
come up
saying.
and scope it out. Just saying. I
mean,
have an apartment downstairs. Just saying.
Part of that is just
Let me
figuring out
know when to block out my unit
Right.
so I can be there too. I have another bedroom,
and
I'm
part of
there.
it is just figuring out how to open it and to get the right people in the right places, and with our Mark and Carrie energy leadership in there and care for the customers, and then how do we replicate that over and over and over. So it's like it's such a different mindset from when we opened our first Sky Zone.
Yeah.
Like that was like survival mode. Now I'm thinking like, okay, like what are the steps, who's doing what, and how do we make sure like when we do the next one. So,
Yeah. And I would invite you also to think about, like, all of you, whenever you're getting ready to step into something, looking at, and you want to be a good steward, right? So you want to think about what are some of the roadblocks. And it was interesting. My mentor was talking about how, like, we've all had children. Have you all stepped on a Lego before barefoot? I don't ever want to do that again, right? And what he talks about is like, if you want to get from your kitchen to your bedroom and there's toys all over the floor, and he's so funny because he's like, first clean up that shit, right? But he's like, if there's toys all over the floor, the toys direct your path, because you go in the path that the toys are not, because you don't want to step on the toys. And the same thing holds true in our mind, right? Like those beliefs or those thoughts. So anywhere you start to feel resistance, and part of why I'm saying that is because, like, I think about all 3 of you, these goals that you've been working towards, and it's not that it's always like, I don't like easy and hard, but it's complicated sometimes, and there's layers to it. But like when you're in flow, like I think about all of you with certain things that are happening, like going into a market, then you assess, is this a place that we could hire people that would do this or not? And trust that the right people are going to come to you, because you attract those kind of people, Carrie. Right? Like you think about the businesses that you had before, you think about the 2 employees you have now that you're looking at, like how one of them's your right-hand woman or whatever, like you have that ability to attract that. So as you look into, and I'm not saying same point, but like as you look into other markets, like be a good steward, but also like believe that you'll find those people, right? Like when I hear people say it's hard to hire good people, I'm like, well, I think that's just a story, because I have 2 people on my team that like fell in my lap that are like awesome, right?
yeah.
And so I just offer that up to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what can I help you all with? What is happening in your worlds today? Other than I can't wait until Thursday, because I have some good meaty stuff for our Thursday call. And I don't want to spill it now. So if you want to continue to talk about books, I'm happy with that. If you would like to, like, if anyone is,
I didn't get to share what my nonfiction read is.
oh yeah, share your
Oh, yeah.
nonfiction read, Kathy.
It's by Brandon Sanderson, and it's like my youngest is reading it, and I kind of read it to connect with her. So I'll read a chapter and then talk about what happened. But it's all like I don't know how to describe it. He is imaginative, is all I'm going to say.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. That reminds me,
Yeah.
Kathy, when I was a youth pastor, and worked full time, we were going on vacation, and I'm like, all the girls are reading this Twilight series thing. So I bought the first book and I thought, I just want to understand what they're reading. I made my husband stop at Walmart in Oklahoma to buy all the rest of them. When you
Mm.
talked about having something to talk to your daughter about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cute. Like it's a topic conversation.
Yeah. Cool. So I will tell you, if nobody has anything, I'm going to ask you to think about a few questions in preparation for our April.
Ooh.
And so you might make this some of your morning pages.
Write it down.
Yeah.
I've packed my stuff, so I'm going to use a Post-it. Like I'm literally going to the airport the second
yeah.
we click off.
Where are you headed?
Chicago. My sister's she had breast cancer 10 years ago, and I didn't know that your implants last 10 years.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
It depends.
Yeah,
So-
10 to 15, and she hers ruptured.
Oh, then they don't
And-
last after that.
No, and it's like pushing her shoulder blade out,
Hmm.
so it's causing some pain.
She's having surgery.
Just swap them out. I'm gonna hang out with her, and then the last night I'm going to my friend's house, who I've been friends with since we were 2, because I grew up in Chicago, and then she lives near the airport, so
Nice.
yeah.
Out in Roseville.
She's in Arlington Heights,
Oh, yeah.
Rosewood. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. Okay,
I'm ready.
thank you. What is my relationship with money?
Is this Cynthia's stuff?
No,
Oh, she asked the same question.
she probably got it from the same book, but I'm not share what the book is because I don't want anybody to buy it before April.
One of the conferences that I go to, or one of the groups I'm in for accounting, like they call it an incubator, and it's a long weekend, and you go through like working on your business and all this stuff. But anyway, he must have given me like 4 or 5 books, like everybody. Like we got a tote bag with all this stuff, and there were books in everybody's bags. And every time I go to a conference with him, I get at least 1 or 2 new books. Like all these books over here, like I haven't had to pay for very many of them. I mean, some of them I have, but it's so, I love that. Like go to a conference, come home with a new book, or at least a book recommendation or something. And
I know I have a shelf in my office that just has books that I've gotten signed, right, by the authors, and like because when you go to those conferences and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what is my relationship with money? Does anybody have a question about what that question means?
I mean, is there more to it, to that question?
Mm-mm.
No.
So when you're writing, try to be open to just whatever comes to you if you're journaling about that question. And if you think about everything as energy, right? We're all neurons and protons. This mug with this cute little mug on it is energy, right? Like it's a solid matter, but there's neurons and protons and everything's like frequency, right? And so when you think about energy, some of that energy is within you, some of it's the actual feel, although I don't know about you guys, but I don't use cash near as much as I used to, and I'd like to go back to using more cash so that we maintain having cash, because I've been in a country that doesn't have cash, and it's, yeah, anyway, squirrel trail there. But the second question is, how well have I used money's energy? And you might identify in your relationship with money, are you like, is the energy,
How well have I used?
how well have you used money's energy? You know, like I realized the other day, and I'm not saying this to toot my horn, but it's something I would do to stay in abundance, where once a month, I just randomly, not anything to do with their service, because I'm not judging what somebody else is going through, but I just randomly would be like, okay, the feeling is hitting me right now. And regardless of what I bought, I do $100 tip. And I've kind of gotten away from doing that. Right. And I'm thinking, oh, isn't that interesting? What's happening right now? And how am I using that energy? Is it scarcity? Is it, you know, those types of things? So, like, even sitting in church on Sunday, I've started to go back a little bit and I was like, oh, I want to write a check, or I should write a check. And then I'm like, oh no, can I afford it this month? You know, like I found myself going into that. So your energy can change, and we're all human, so don't beat yourself up as you look at the way you've used it, but it's more for an awareness perspective. And then the third one is, well, let me ask, any questions about that particular question? And then we can debrief and talk through some of this too before you actually go do it. But the third one is, how is it a mirror for the way I handle other forms of energy in life? So how is the answers to the last two questions a mirror for the way I handle other forms of energy in my life?
Mine's obvious.
Do you care to share?
Well, my relationship with money is really weird. You know, I have it, but I can't earn it. You know, because I have plenty of money. I'm just trying to, you know, get paid for what I do.
Yeah.
And you know, I have the guy in the house. We live together, but I don't receive love from him because he's, you know, in pain and not well and living in his little basement bedroom, so he doesn't have to do the stairs, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when we talk about the mirror, kind of two things with that. And yeah, I'm going into Thursday stuff, so I'm going to have to create some more, but I couldn't help myself. But if you think about the mirror, right? The mirror, the law of polarity says there's two sides to everything, right? So if there are two sides to everything, we tend to think about looking in the mirror and saying, okay, what is the shadow side? Like, what is the shadow side teaching me? Like, how have I used, you know, like when I think about the energy I have around money, how is that showing up in other areas of my life? And we tend to go towards things that need changing, right? Or development, or those things that, you know, are biggest, our Achilles heel, right? Like the biggest thing that's our biggest strength can also be our biggest weakness, right? Like we tend to go towards and think about that side of the mirror. But if we have a shadow side, we then also have a what?
Like,
Light side.
Yeah, a light side. And also thinking about how is the way you use money a mirror for how you show up in other areas of your life. Also look at that bright side, right? Because when you think about looking in the mirror, like an example would be if you see something that you appreciate about each one of you on the screen, right? Or that you wish you had, you have it, or you wouldn't have been able to see it. That's the law of vibration. Right. So when I've talked to each one of you and said things I admire about you, those may be things I want traits in my own life. And in the past, I hadn't thought, oh, I don't have those because Kathy's got it, or Pam's got it, or Carrie's got it. But it's in you, or you wouldn't have recognized it. Does that make sense? So when you're looking at like money and how you've handled the energy of money, and sometimes it's good to think back to like, what are messages you heard from your father? What are messages you heard from your mother, from your siblings, from best friends? Like, what are some of those messages that you've heard about money? And sometimes it's subtle. Like my dad would be like, "You're cold, go put on another sweater. We're not turning up the heat," right?
Mhm.
Or we have a water drought and I planted flowers, so you got to stand in, like mid-calf water because we're going to use that water to water the plants, right? Like, and those
But you
stories
do
are,
have a nice sweater.
yeah, thank you. I do love the sweater. Cozy. But the point being is sometimes there's really subtle messages that have come our way, right? And I
Mhm.
think about, like, for me, and I might have shared this with you before, even subtle messages about money, meaning when my mom passed away, we found all these little bags of candy, like a lot of them unopened, right? Like stashed in her desk drawer or in a pocket or like in the kitchen drawer, in the junk drawer, like just all over the place. And as I started to unwind that, she was like, when I say poor, like she was not lying when she said they had to walk uphill both ways because they lived in a valley on this gravel road. And like sometimes barefoot because they didn't have the money for shoes and they split an egg between 4 girls, right? So she never got candy when she was little. So like she would buy this candy. So inadvertently, I've done work around this, but like I find that when I start filling my fridge with food, when there's one of me, right? Like that's a sure sign that I'm going back into scarcity in a subconscious way, right? So then when we bring it into the conscious, we can become aware of it and work with that. So the long story short, or long story long here, is notice also messages that you might have gotten from your upbringing, from communities that you're in. Like Pam, I know too, like in the accounting world, there's some definite messages that come out, in the accounting world. There's definite messages that come out within being an author, Kathy, or I think about artists. Like I heard the other day, my nail tech was doing my nails and talking about her daughter and how she wanted a backup plan because she would be a starving artist. And I'm like, that's such a story in your head, right? Like that's the Legos that people are putting down to go in the path. So like when you're looking in that mirror, just make sure to look at what are also the positive messages that you received from people or communities that you've been a part of around money.
It's pretty interesting because my husband does hide candy all over our house. And he doesn't do it as much as he used to, but man, you would like, open a cabinet or like on the top, the bowl on the top shelf always has candy in it. I know where to find it, but I used to think it was because he was trying to hide it from the kids, but maybe not. So
Yeah, maybe not. There might be something deep in the subconscious, right? I don't know what his family system is or how he grew up. Sometimes being the youngest of a bunch of kids, you hid stuff because you knew that your brothers or sisters would take it, right?
yep. Well, and it's interesting. So my dad was an accountant in a small town, but he had some wealth from his father in a trust that he managed a trust there, and like he would drive like a used cream colored yellowish Oldsmobile 98, right? And I'd be like, Dad, I know, I've seen your spreadsheet. I know you have $1 million. Why are you driving this car? Like, and he's like, well, we don't have to show off that we have money, like that I have whatever, like we live, whatever. And I was like, okay. And then here's Carrie, look at the Porsche we just got, right? I think my youngest rebellious side is coming out. So
Yeah, and it could be, but don't beat yourself up about that either,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's a balancing act of like trusting the universe and trusting that the money will be there, right? And like depending on where you're at, like even biblically it talks about that, and even within like um Buddhism it talks about that, and how like things will be provided. But there's also then a lot of guilt and shame that comes sometimes when we do acquire certain things, right? Just based on society, all sorts of things. And that's why it's so important. And we're going to do a little bit of work on this either before or when we get to Costa Rica, about kind of that, what do I stand for, right? So that it can be like, Dad, I'm glad you like your Oldsmobile and that you don't want to show off. And I don't feel like I'm showing off, right? Like, because part of that message that I heard in there, Carrie, is like, you feel like you're showing off because you just bought a Porsche, when in fact, it's not. It's just what you want.
Well, I just think you can't take it with you either. Like you missed out on a lot of fun that you could have had for actually like in the whole realm of like not that much of, not that he had to have a Portia, but like, go get he had a Firebird when I was little and he loved that. Like,
Yeah.
don't deprive yourself of that. So,
Yeah. There's a good book out there and I haven't read the whole thing yet. So don't like on the brief amount that I've read and I trust my mastermind sisters, it's called Die with Zero.
hmm.
And it kind of talks to that, right? Like for some people, it is important to leave a legacy. Like I think about my mother-in-law who still has the same carpet in her house from the 1970s. And I think the same, like very much a Walton or the Walmart guy, like very much like that, but yet is worth like $6 million, right? And so when I look at that, that's just the way she chose to live. That's what was comfortable for her. But I don't know where I was going with that. I
I don't
just,
know, there's like Denzel Washington's quote of like, there's no U-Haul behind a hearse.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that
True
that
story.
was in my mind when you were talking. So something along that line.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy, because she did not live outside of her house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she didn't really love being social. She didn't like being out and about with people. They didn't really, they lived a life that they enjoyed, but I think there's things that she held back not doing because of like not wanting to spend the money, right? And again, we all have even generational stuff because we all have like past people in our lives that have been through the Great Depression, right? Which brings on a whole lot of messages that happen and carry down from people. I love the story, and some of you I'm sure have heard this, where this girl wanted to learn how her mom made the pot roast. So she came over to her house and she was watching her mom do the pot roast and she cut off the ends of the pot roast. And she said, "Why do you cut off the ends of the pot roast?" And her mom goes, "I don't know. That's just how my mom always made it. Let's call your grandma and find out." So they called her and she said, "I just didn't have a pan big enough to fit the whole pot roast in." Right. So they're like cutting off all these pieces just because her grandma at the time didn't have a pan that was big enough to hold the whole long thing. Right.
Mm.
So it just brings to light that sometimes we get into the habit of doing things without thinking about it because of the messages that come into our mind. And if you think about too, the fact that like the brain and the mind are two different things. Carrie, you just looked up, you're like, tell me more.
Oh, no,
So,
I'm thinking. Yeah.
okay. So if you,
She's using your mind.
Mhm.
yeah, she's using her mind. I love you, Kathy. Like if you think about the brain is gray matter, right? That's in our skull. It's the physical, it's the hardware that we have in our body. Because if you think about when you die, is your brain still part of the physiological makeup? Yeah, it doesn't just disappear. I mean, it does eventually, right? But like that moment of death, like your gray matter is still there, but your mind is not. Because the mind
Mhm.
is connected to the brain, the heart, the soul, or intuition, and your body, right?
Right. You can
And so,
slice the brain, but can't find a thought.
yes, yes. And if you think about that being the hardware and your mind being the software, and you think about that, if our brain holds sound, right? Because really, if you think about vibrational energy, right? And there's some really good stuff. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I shared this with you. I'll share a video with you in the WhatsApp about the scientist that did some work and did music and put like sand and he used water and fire. And when they changed the vibrational energy, the movement that happened and created form, right? So it creates a form. So if you think about frequency, like if you think about that as frequency creates form, and how we have the capability to create frequency in our mind. I keep doing this, but it's really everywhere, right? And that's kind of why I want to look at these three questions to tie it back, is really thinking about, and this is not the time to be like, oh, I know this is my mind doing this, but like, I want you to get into that shadow side a little bit too. Like, I found too, when I was thinking about this, part of how I've used the energy of money is in pissed offness. I just made it my own word, right? Like being really pissed off at my ex-husband who's going to inherit a shit ton of money. And I spent 30 years supporting him. I haven't worked all the way through this. Can you tell in my voice? I'm working. right? Like I'm working on it, but I didn't have this realization, right? Like I'm mad about that. I'm really pissed off about it. And so it's important to feel those feelings. And so the energy that I've used, no wonder leaves on my money tree are dying. Plus I overwatered it. But like and that then vibrates in an energy that attracts or detracts money. You follow where I'm going with that? So part of this is we're going to be looking at this energy of, are there places where I'm blaming other people or blaming things for my own energy? Because then we have to look at, and when I say responsible, we have to be careful, because a lot of times when we use that word responsible, there's guilt and shame automatically attached to that. Like you're responsible for that situation. And it's not about guilt and shame, but it's more about understanding the frequency and how we take that energy and use it and take responsibility. Like I have on my playbook that I read every day. I'll just read it to you. I am willing to grow up and take responsibility for my life, right? Like things that happen. So if something gets screwed up, I have to look at, okay, wait a minute. Did I set up and did I communicate well enough? Like I have to look at those things and all of that is energy. And I know I'm kind of pontificating everywhere, but when you answer those 3 questions, really give yourself some space to drop into those questions. And that's where, like, for me, I've got 3 different sheets of paper and I have each question on it. And then as I think of something, I'm just going back to it. Right. But allow yourself some space to answer those questions. And I'll get those to the photographer and Lachelle and Meredith.
Well, one of the things I do every day, I almost wear as my perfume, is I have a Young Living oil called Abundance, and I put it on my wrist and I'm right here every single day. And there's something about like the woo, but it's also just like thinking the word abundance, the intention every morning. And so
and you said that's a doTERRA?
It's Young Living.
Young Living, okay.
And I also love the smell, but
we all love the smell of abundance.
Yes, we do. And what does abundance smell like? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was writing a little bit about how when you talked about your mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And living the way they did. And I wrote that I had twice in my life have had the big giant house, 6,000 or 7,000 square feet. And both times I found the house overwhelming because it was too big and it took too much to take care of. And it took away from the joy of other things like community with my friends, because who had time, like you had a terribly disorganized house if you were out with your friends all the time, because I've done that once too. You couldn't afford the fun car and you couldn't travel because you were always taking care of this big house. And so I think that it's important, like when we talk about money, that also abundance includes all of those other things.
Absolutely.
There is freedom in having like financial wealth that allows you to have the abundance, because now I have a 4,000 square foot house and Rita cleans it every week. So because I have that financial freedom, I can enjoy the abundance and the wealth of the other things and not worry as much. So what does abundance smell like? There's some freedom in there.
Yeah.
And it also has a little bit of a cinnamon smell. And
in my house, it smells like Fabulosa
stretchy
after
smell
Isabella leaves.
Okay, wait, Pamela, what'd you say? And then I want to hear what Kathy said.
I said in my house, it smells like Fabuloso, which is the cleaning solution that Hispanic cleaners clean with.
That's
I
funny.
know it will.
Kathy, what were you saying?
She said it's cinnamon, and I was like, does it also smell like Homestretch?
Yeah. It smells like new carpet, paint.
New car
Well,
smell.
and our definition of abundance is going to be different than everyone else's, right? Like we're specifically talking about money because here's the deal. When you change your energy about anything, and you guys have started to see this even in the physicality piece that you were working on, right? Like a tide rises all boats. So when you change the money, when you change your energy around money, or change your energy around relationships, or change your money, geez, your energy around your physicality, because part of what we do is we compress ourselves into our physical body when we're infinite, right? And if we could just accept that, wow, watch out, world, right?
Yeah. I
So
don't quite fit in the body. Um,
yeah,
so I guess this is actually a better win than what I shared is when we were at the grocery store, my daughter paid for the groceries.
that's awesome. Yeah.
That's what I mean, because that's I think my biggest challenge is receiving, because like I have it, but for her to do that, and I could see all the tendency is like, no,
Huh.
instead of thank you. So my
Yeah.
response to that, like,
And you know what? That's a great exercise that I would also challenge all of us to do. Um, I'm writing this down, is notice where abundance is coming into your life, because it's not all about getting a dollar bill, right? Like
right.
there's abundance in, like the other day I went to coffee with someone, and I usually buy coffee, and she's like, no, let me get your coffee. And I'm like, I found myself wanting to argue like my family system does. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you. That wasn't expected, but very much appreciated. Right. Like, and so noticing where that abundance comes, even in time, right? Like I had somebody cancel at my 9 o'clock today, and I'm like, you know what? Thank you, Jesus, because I needed an extra hour today to do something. And so I want you to start noticing where abundance is showing up in your life, not just monetarily. And abundance means something different to each person. Because, like Carrie, when you were talking about a 4,000 square foot home, that's what I went from into the house I'm in today. And like literally, this is my floor. And I have 3 floors that are like that, right? And I live on this one and in my bedroom. And sometimes that's too much for me, right? Like as I've scaled down. And one of the things, like this is a message I have, that the more things I have, because let me back up. So I experienced when we were getting ready to move into this house, we lived in a very small cabin. And we had a little storage unit that we were like changing out winter stuff for summer stuff, because we just didn't have the place to keep it in the cabin while the house was being built. And I have never felt so much freedom in my entire life. Right? Because to your point, Carrie, I didn't have all this shit to take care of.
Yep.
Right. And even now, even though my house is not that big, I'm like, ooh, I'm probably going to need to hire somebody to help me paint here pretty soon on the inside, 7 years, about time to paint. And I could paint, but that's not something I'm good at. And it would take me 3 months to do on my own. And so like there's things that then I'm taking care of the flowers outside, which I could kick myself to say, why did I ever do that? Right. Like, and not in a bad judgment way, but just more so like from a time. So for me, like a message and my relationship with money sometimes is the more stuff I acquire, the less free I feel, which has helped me this year. And I'm still doing it, is purging, right? Like continuing to purge, because that external world is a display of your internal.
I think this is an age thing too. Like as we like grow up and mature, we start to have these kinds of realizations about stuff.
Because we've gotten wiser.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like
There's a lot of
Winston
minimalism.
Churchill's quote is, if you're not a conservative when you're young, you don't have a brain, and if you're not a liberal when you're old, you don't have a heart.
Interesting. I'd never heard
So,
that.
and so we kind of like, if you're evolving, you're going to change your entire perspective.
Yeah, totally. And what's interesting is I look at this younger generation, and there's a lot of people in this younger generation that have taken on a much more minimalist like lifestyle, and it's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, I don't remember the term for it, but it's something about like your outfit, like where you buy 10 or 12 different things that all go together, and that's your whole
icing,
wardrobe.
frosting.
And so like you mix and match, and you might buy some cheaper stuff, but like you spend good money on those 10 or 12 things and then mix and match, and you don't need a whole closet full of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to spend money on things that are going to last instead of buying 15 shirts from Shein. They're going to last 3 washes, right? You're going to buy one shirt that's going to last you 10 years.
And it's
But my cousin who's 30, I think she's 30. Yeah. She's all about that. And I can't remember what the term of that is.
Capsule wardrobe.
Yeah.
Capsule.
Yeah.
It's all over TikTok, ladies.
I'm not a TikToker. I haven't seen that.
And so, you know, it's about wisdom. And, you know, I see sometimes this, and not necessarily, but it's like when I think about like all of the different generations, there's just different things that we've learned along the way. And that's the important piece of it, is understanding who you are and what's okay for you. And it may not be the same as other people. And to me, that this is my idea of freedom, when I can let go of, you know, and know that what works for me may not work for other people, and that's okay. Like, I sounded like I had judgment with my mother-in-law. I suppose I still have some work to do there, but you know, like that was her journey, but it doesn't have to be mine, right? And so knowing who you are, what works for you, what your definition of abundance is, how you show up in relationship to the actual money, right, will change other areas of your life. And we've been working on that in some of the different arenas. But that's like, we're going to go pretty deep on this when we go to Costa Rica. So we're going to do a few things in preparation for that. So we've got 2 minutes. What does abundance smell like to you? You said the cleaning stuff, Pam, or were you joking?
No, that is part of it, right? It's like when we were young and first married, like I would never spend money on a housekeeper, right? Like there was no money for that. It was diapers and, you know, like, and now we have somebody who mows the lawn and somebody who cleans the house, and we don't have to struggle with that, as we're both 2 full-time working people. And so, yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Sunshine and tropical smells also, to me, is abundance.
Kathy or Carrie, anything to add to your previous smell? For me, it's peppermint. It's like it's fresh with opportunity.
I'm just
And
waiting
I
for
guess-
another quote from Kathy. She's been on the quotes today.
Yeah.
Oops.
Good thing.
I don't know, because I'm actually struggling right now with trying to come up with smell. I was telling my youngest Evie today, or yesterday, I was like, I don't have a good sense of smell. And I know that because when I was pregnant, I had a really good sense of smell.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you guys smell that? And they're like, yeah, all the time. So I don't know, but like what comes to me with abundance is, nature. So maybe like the smell of trees and pine and that
Earthy.
kind of smell. Yeah.
Cool.
Because if you have time to just kind of, spend time in nature, that's a luxury.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right, my next call has already just started, so I'm going to hop off this.
All
Everybody
right, I'm
have
gonna
a
go.
fabulous
All right.
week. We'll see you on Thursday.
Okay,
Thanks, ladies.
bye.
Bye.